Hello, everyone. My name is Connor Peng, and I'm a 16-year-old high school student from Canada. I'm passionate about research, specifically in the medical field, and currently help to run Relay for Life at my high school, which is a charity organization that helps fundraise for research at the Canadian Cancer Society. Like many of you listeners, I myself am also looking to further my understanding in research. And today I'm joined with our guest speaker, Amelie Chen.
Everyone, my name is Amelie Chen, and I'm a 17-year-old rising senior at Pacific Horizon School. I come from the U.S. territory of American Samoa. I'm a two-time Grand Award ISEF winner, a National Junior Science and Humanities Symposium winner, a two-time first place state science fair champion, and a Research Science Institute scholar.
Moving into our first segment here, how did you first get started with research?
That's a great question. So, my journey was a little different, and my story is different from most people. It was a really long roller coaster, but my research journey is proof that no matter what background you come from or what resources you have, you can achieve almost anything if you put your mind to it. So, my journey started at a fancy lab at UC Berkeley, where I spent 2 weeks learning how to create algal biofuel. I got hands on experience with lab equipment and chemicals, and I was eager to bring all this research back to my home island to make a real impact. But when I asked my professor if that was possible, his answer was simply just no. So I went home with all this research in my head, all these ideas. I was really disappointed, but I was still determined, so I tried to do it anyways. But instead, I was met with countless rejection emails and the harsh reality that my island didn't have the resources that I needed. So I tried shipping things, impossible because of the government's laws. And this was around the lowest point of my science journey because nothing was working. Not my experiment, not my idea. And I was chasing an almost impossible dream and had a PhD professor who doubted me. So I had no mentor, no mentor to guide me, and zero funding for my experiments. However, I was really determined to make this work. So over the next few months, I did what any other scientist would do. I researched, I experimented, and I failed a lot. So, by my sophomore year, I developed a novel way to produce algal biofuel using local resources, aiming to help underdeveloped regions achieve environmental sustainability. I took on the issue of algae overgrowth in American Samoa and I turned it into something valuable for us. I collected algae samples from around the island, and believe it or not, I also figured out how to create potassium iodide from coconuts. So I tried to take something that was extremely detrimental to our island, algae, which was hurting our coral reefs, and turn it to something great and useful, and it could help with lower the carbon emissions in our atmosphere. And so with limited resources, no mentors, and minimal funding, I was able to achieve something no one had before. And I entered this project into science fairs and symposiums. And while it was a constant challenge, in the end, it was worth every moment. There were times where I wanted to quit during my science journey, but as someone who is about to graduate, I'm a senior, it was pretty worth it. And I'm incredibly grateful for my parents and science teachers who thought I was crazy and insane trying to do something that was like impossible. But throughout the entire journey, they were supportive and they weren't even sure what I was doing half the time, but in the end, they helped me a lot.
Adding on to what you talked about in terms of using those skills that you developed into applying to science fairs and things like that, how did you succeed at ISEF? What was your experience at ISEF?
My experience at ISEF was great. Being at the International Science and Engineering Fair, it was an incredibly inspiring experience. It was very transformative and new for me too, coming from American Samoa. The diversity of students from all around the world was amazing because I learned so much about their unique ideas and cultures. There were over 1,600 students from all around the world, and walking through the exhibition halls, I met people from countries I've only read about, and we're all united by a shared of passion for science and discovery. And there was a place that I made lifelong friends, and I learned a lot about their cultures and experiences and different educations. The energy at the event was extremely contagious, and ultimately, it wasn't even just about competing. There was so much more to that, like the pin exchanges, meeting people, learning.
That's great to hear. You also mentioned that you took part in one of the most prestigious research programs known as RSI. Could you tell us a bit about what that is and how it was?
So I'm a senior right now, and my junior summer, which was last summer, I attended the Research Science Institute held at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. This is a prestigious research program where they accept 100 students from all around the world to spend 6 weeks at MIT conducting research with some of the brightest minds from around the world. And at MIT, I was able to work in their labs and also with MIT researchers. And for me, my experience at RSI was great, and it was one of the best summers of my life. I met some of the smartest people from all around the world, and the experience was overall just very eye opening. At RSI, I was able to attend lectures from Nobel laureates and some of the most notable scientists from around the world. I even had the lucky opportunity to have dinner with Dr. Feng Zhang, who is the scientist who basically enhanced CRISPR. The Research Science Institute is sponsored by CEE, the Center of Excellence in Education, MIT alumni, and many different organizations and foundations. They are the ones who have generously made the RSI experience free of cost, providing a once in a lifetime opportunity to conduct research at MIT with the professors and researchers there. And so, RSI scholars, we participate in a week first of intensive STEM classes with accomplished professors, and then we have a 5 week research internship where we can make our own projects under the guide of our mentors who are experienced scientists and researchers in those fields. During the final week of RSI, students prepare a written and oral presentations based on their research projects. Mine was about optimal path planning in the ocean, and I worked at the MC's lab. We worked with real time data across the globe, and the region I focused on was the Portugal Azores region. And so overall, RSI, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I think that it really changed my life. I was able to immerse myself in a community of brilliant, passionate, and students and mentors who all shared a deep love for science and discovery. The people at RSI were amazing, and being surrounded by people who are solving real world problems at my age opened my eyes to the boundless possibilities ahead of me. So I left RSI feeling very empowered and ready to take on challenges I once thought were impossible. So my experience there was definitely worth the hype.
RSI sounded like such a great experience for you. And now that many students have heard that, I bet that they'd be wanting to apply there. And knowing that RSI is such a competitive program with, I think, about a 3% acceptance rate, what would you recommend for them to look at for when considering focusing on the application? How did that application differ from other types of applications you've seen in terms of programs and competitions?
That's a great question. So, for my personal experience, the RSI application was pretty mediocre in terms of length. However, my friends would disagree. They said that it was the longest application of their life. There were a few essays in the application, and I think around 6 to 7. And I put down the application questions here too. And so it differed from other applications because of the length. It was really long and it focused primarily on research, what your project was about and what you were interested in, what fields, and why you wanted to apply for RSI. And so overall, the RSI application basically reflected a college application looking for your achievements, extracurriculars, and hours the same way you would apply on Common App. So for the essay questions, number one, they asked, why did you choose these research fields with 5,000 characters? And I talked about my fascination with computer science and the endless possibilities that you could do with it. I talked about how computer science coding was basically like playing with Legos. You have thousands of different pieces, and with all these Legos, you can create virtually anything you want. And so I also talked about my project from ISEF. And number two was, what are your long range goals with 5,000 characters? I talked about developing an alternative biofuel to help save the world and my ISEF project. And in the end, I wanted to bring this back and help people. And number three, what activities and slash or hobbies demonstrate your leadership, creativity, and uniqueness? This was 5,000 characters, and I talked about community service and growing up on an island. That was the unique part of me, where I come from a place that I don't think anyone's really heard of, American Samoa, but it's really special to me, and it's my home, and it's all I've ever known. Aside from growing up on this island, I was deeply immersed in culture, and so dancing was a big part of me. I started dancing when I was around 3 years old, and I've been performing ever since. I've traveled across the globe to perform. And fun fact, I even performed at the Killian Hall at MIT, where I performed a traditional Siva Samoa, or even at the Mate Raw World Championships, I also performed on international stages there. And next month, I'll be performing for King Charles, which is pretty cool. So, I talked about dancing and being proud of my culture and wearing our traditional outfit to basically everywhere, to the White House and to ISEF and etc. And number four, describe your participation in extracurricular or community outreach activities. This was 5,000 characters. And I talked about being a sailing coach. I'm a national sailor, competitive sailor in the ILCA 6 laser class. And so I teach students from 6 to 20 on how to sail in opties, lasers, and 420s. I'm also the president of the Interact Club. So we had many community service projects, which one was working with the special needs youth community in American Samoa, and also hosting a lot of beach cleanups. I'm also a lifeguard and I do a lot of community service. And next was, why are you applying to RSI? What aspects most appeal to you? This was 2,000 characters. And for me, I talked about how RSI represented more than just a personal goal. It was a transformative opportunity that had the potential to reshape my academic journey. I quote from my essay. So I talk about how passionate I am in research, and if provided the opportunity, I would definitely take advantage of that so we can make a lasting impact on the world with my project. I loved my project and I wanted to take my project from American Samoa and just share it with the world. And lastly, it was, please briefly describe the topic and structure of your most significant or most recent research project. Summarize your contributions to the project and indicate what specific tasks you undertook. This was 6,000 words, and I went over everything I said on the first question about my ISEF project. And so I talked about my two-time ISEF project and about using limited resources to create algal biofuel in American Samoa. So to sum it up, it's kind of lengthy, but mind you, some of them are characters, not words, so don't worry about it. And looking back, yeah, it was pretty long, so make sure you plan ahead and start early. This is just like a college application, so it'll prepare you really well.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. That's great. Moving on a bit, you've achieved so much in these prestigious research competitions and programs. Could you tell us what got you into these amazing programs and what students can do to start preparing for such programs?
That's a great question. So, I think getting me into these programs and competition was, it was my passion. So, just like any other kid, I love going outside, exploring our jungles, climbing trees, hiking mountains, swimming, and I love sailing. So, through my love of water sports, I noticed that we had a major problem of algae overgrowth on my island. As previously mentioned, algae was killing our coral reefs, they were naturally abundant, and American Samoa was the home that I was born and raised in, and I wanted to protect and save it. So, I tried to find a solution to this problem. I ended up creating a novel way to produce biofuel using local resources, and creating this biofuel targeted the harmful algal blooms. And so this was my passion. I wanted to find a way to lower the amount of carbon emitted into the atmosphere. I wanted to find a way to change people's lives. And ultimately, what got me into these programs and competitions was my passion to help my island community and ultimately the world. I know it sounds big, but that was my dream. I was really passionate about all the things I did, and passion, passion, passion. Yeah, it's very important because that's what drives me to work when I'm feeling low or even when I feel like giving up. I think about how my research could impact and help people.
What about preparing for specific competitions like ISEF, where it's typically more self led and directed, where it's dependent on the student? How did you succeed?
So, preparing for self directed competitions like ISEF, it requires a lot of focus, passion, and resilience. Start with a problem you're genuinely interested in, and that's really important because this will keep you motivated throughout all the setbacks. Find topics, passions, or things that interest you and explore the areas of your interest. Research what is known and develop an experiment to solve the scientific problem you have chosen. Make sure to break the project into manageable steps and dive into the research to understand your subject just beyond the basics from there. And be resourceful, especially if you lack access to labs or mentors, similar in my situation. Focus on learning from your failures and make sure you view them as part of the process. And lastly, my last piece of advice would be practice communicating your project clearly and make sure you ask for feedback from other people like your friends, parents, teachers, and this can help you continuously improve. And it's not ultimately about just completing a project, but embracing the journey of discovery.
That is amazing advice. Planning ahead is always important in anything that we do. So, yeah, I really like that part there. Moving on a bit, what should students be focused on when they actually apply to these programs? Particularly, should they be focused on their classes, their grades, certain stats that will stand out more?
So, for research programs, they're looking for students who are passionate about research. This is different from athletics and all of the other fields. So, this means right now, if you're in middle school or high school, you need to be aiming for good grades, trying to do some community service and extracurricular activities. And note that extracurricular activities are not just for you to put on college apps, but they're there to help you explore your interests, find your passions, and they also offer essential life skills. My extracurricular activities included a STEM outreach program where I led technology and engineering workshops. I created the ROV outreach program for my state and a mental health campaign for my island, directly impacting 320 locals and 50 businesses. And for my research science institute applications, I included volunteering as a lifeguard for veterans and all the CPR courses I organized and taught to the youth in my community for free. There are many things that I've listed here that you can do too, but it does take initiative. I wanted to show that I was a well rounded student and had many parts of me aside from just doing biochemistry or coding, for example. While that's very important to have a passion, they want to know more about you instead of just one side.
Yeah, I think that that is definitely something students should look out for. In terms of extracurriculars and things like that, would you recommend quality or quantity? Because you kind of need a mixture of both, right?
I think you should focus on quality. You find what you want to do, what you're passionate about, and you make a real impact with quality. And so I put more time into things like Student Government Association, where I continuously did it for multiple years. So I was president junior year and senior year, continuing on my projects, proving that I could do more with the Student Government Association. And so I definitely think quality is more important than quantity.
Yeah, I think quality is more important when it comes to showing your growth and leadership over time, for sure. So, as we wrap up with today's interview, what is one piece of advice that you would give to students that are just starting out in research?
As a student scientist or researcher, one of the most important lessons I've learned is that science or making discoveries doesn't mean just being the smartest person in the room. It comes from persistence, curiosity, and believing in your idea even when the world doesn't see it yet. So you're going to face a lot of challenges, obstacles, and yes, failure. Lots and lots of failure. But remember that failure isn't the end, it's just another piece of data. It's a stepping stone for your next breakthrough. Don't be afraid to take risks, think differently, and push boundaries. Stay hungry for knowledge and be humble enough to learn from anyone around you. At the same time, be bold enough to challenge the status quo. If you stay passionate, open minded, and determined, there's no limit to what you can accomplish. So the world is waiting for your ideas. So don't hold back and go out there and make an impact. Thank you.